The 12th so-called proof against the existence of God is entitled See the Magic. And it's, again, another recurring theme in these various questions. The argument basically goes like this. Religion is typically characterized by magical claims. He refers to the claims of Mormonism, finding golden plates, and refers to Christianity with the virgin birth of Jesus, and so on. He makes a couple of statements that I'd like to read. He says, we know when stories are imaginary because they include magic. And I'm taking it that the word magic here, which I think is a bit of an inflammatory word, Christianity doesn't typically use the word magic here for extraordinary or supernatural events. We would call them miracles because they are events that we believe give evidence of the providential plan of God in some extraordinary way. In other words, God is speaking to us, revealing something to us. The word magic, I think, too much presents the idea of somebody just doing a trick or doing something to make you think they have supernatural power. When in Christianity and in Judaism, the miracles that we believe in are unusual or extraordinary events that also bear with them some revelation from God. He also makes note of the fact that the miracles of Jesus did not leave behind tangible evidence. Not entirely sure what tangible evidence would mean. Presumably when Jesus healed people, they were healed, and that would be the physical remaining evidence. Obviously that's not around anymore because those people have died. The resurrection of Jesus would leave behind an empty tomb, and it would leave witnesses behind who saw the risen Jesus. We know those two things exist. There was a large church in Jerusalem, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which goes back to very ancient times as a location that the Christians revered as the site of the empty tomb of Jesus. If you want to call that physical evidence. We also, of course, as I said a moment ago, have the testimony of the early witnesses to Jesus, people who gave their lives for their belief that Jesus had risen from the dead. And Christians have always been inspired by these facts as a source of deep confidence in the risen Jesus. Now, he goes on to argue that only physical evidence or only scientific evidence would count or suffice as proof of a miracle actually having transpired. What bothers me here is a couple of things. First of all, if in fact God exists, which of course is a more fundamental question than this question about miracles, if in fact God exists, then God has the power to bring this world into being. And if the world has been brought into being by God, then that event in and of itself is a supernaturally caused event. And therefore the very existence of the world around us is a stunning miracle in the sense of something brought this world into being that is not a natural cause. Now, if that's true, then the entirety of the world is lingering physical evidence of divine causality. And therefore the atheist looks around and says, show me a miracle, show me some sign of supernatural power. And the Christian simply responds and says, open up your eyes and look. Take a look at what actually exists. That in and of itself, I would argue, is sufficient reason to believe in God. Now, we're talking here specifically about Christian claims of miracles. And of course, in Christian theology, miracles are, as I said, unusual or extraordinary events that carry with them some type of revelatory meaning. They're showing us something or teaching us something from God. And of course, the validity of that message from God or the compelling nature of that message from God is to be determined by listening to it. A Christian is one who comes to believe the Christian faith because we see its coherence, its power, its explanatory power. We see the supporting evidences for it, but on a very deep level, it's sort of like, as I've mentioned before, it's like the experience of loving someone. There's a level of commitment and trust that's involved with it. These are the deepest, most meaningful aspects of human experience, is trust and belief and love. And so what the Christian does is the Christian embraces the faith of the Christian community that has passed along that faith and way of life that we find richly fulfilling and deeply satisfying. To be a Christian is to have an outlook on where the world came from, where it's going, what it means, what its purpose is, what my life means. It's to understand what you're to do with your life, the moral principles that should govern your life. It gives to us a source of all of this in the eternal triune God who is eternal love and who showed us his great love by entering into this world in the person of Jesus. All of this that I'm just briefly sketching for you is part of a whole way of looking at things. When I read or look at atheist arguments like the ones that I'm responding to here, it strikes me as so shallow and so petty oftentimes because it's picking on one feature or another feature of a massive framework and a whole vision of life and of reality that we don't accept because of this one thing here or that one thing there. We accept it because of the whole integrated vision of life that it provides for us. And that's why I don't find these arguments compelling. I can easily react to them and simply say our different worldview, the fact that I believe in a supernatural God who brought this world into existence, means that I'm going to have a very different attitude toward miracles. Furthermore, the other problem that I have is this assumption that everything is reducible to a scientific test. Historical events are not reducible to a scientific test. An event of the past is not something I can reproduce under a microscope or see through a telescope or through some repeated observational type of experience. There have been unique people who have lived in the history of the world. We don't have to go back very far in history to find people who did extraordinary things or unusual things. And you can't repeat their lives in a test tube or in a science lab. Historical events are unique singularities. Each human life is a unique event. Yes, there are some features of it that are the same as other lives, but to act as if everything about human experience can be reduced to simply a scientific test strikes me as being rather absurd. History is a collection of unique events, and if there's anything we know about history is that it's quite unpredictable. We don't know what is going to happen in the future, and those who try to predict what's going to happen tomorrow most oftentimes show themselves to be rather foolish. The wisest people that I know admit they are not prophets, they cannot see tomorrow, and they admit that they can't know for sure what is going to happen. The reason for that is because there's a deep level of unpredictability in human experience. And that, of course, is very closely related to the question that we're looking at here, because the issue is regarding miracles and some type of scientific test of a miracle. The two things don't work together. Science has to do with predictable, regular, orderly, observable, repeatable types of things, whereas miracles have to do, by their very definition, with unique singularities, unique events that reveal something from God. So to say that you're going to use a scientific test to do it is almost like saying, I'm going to see sound or I'm going to hear color. It doesn't make sense. They're two different things, and you can't subject them to the same type of test.